Okay, anyway, I'll just go ahead and talk about the topic and then stop the screen sharing and take Q&A, right? So a little bit of myself. I'm Shesh. I've been a product leader and in product management for almost for 20 years now, and been in different industries, been in the networking where it's Cisco and storage networking, moved on to consumer with Netgear. Prior to that, I was also with Ericsson, which is also into consumer slash mobile, and then moved on to cloud. Cloud, I had my own startup, and everywhere it was a product role. So that got excited. And I can talk a little more towards the end about how I made a transition to product management role. But product and technology has a good intersection. And I would encourage everybody to wear hat as needed, because same person could be doing a technology role, but many times had to wear the product management hat. And then when I did transition, I also did a strategy consulting, work with number of companies in different domains. And I also, what I said, did transition into e-commerce. Started with Groupon, then moved on to Amazon, currently at Walmart. Different roles, but always has been a product management role, right? The product management concept has been there for long, but not in the IT industry or software industry for too long. I still remember when back in 2005, 2006, when I was doing my MBA, there was no product management as a course or even as an elective available. It was a product marketing towards the end of my program. And it was a marketing under the marketing major. Product marketing was one of the offerings. But in the last 10 plus years, it's really transformed, and it becomes a very critical role for everybody to have a product management, even as early stage startups, growth stage startup, definitely a larger stage company. And towards the second half, I'll also be talking a little bit about the voice first thinking, because it's so critical. And it would have been a completed day workshop for me. Each of them, product management is a half-day workshop I've done before. Voice first thinking, I have a half-day workshop at IIT Kharagpur last year, 2019. And because of this situation here, I thought I'll do a webinar, but definitely I'm working with the GUVi team to see if we can do a workshop, and I would love to have you guys participate there. Let's get started, right? So primarily when we say product management, there are a few things which I want to cover and go a little deep into this. And I'll also do a time check. So it's about 5 minutes into the call now. 15, 20 minutes, I'll go talk about some of these things. And towards second half, when I go towards voice first thinking, I'll tie back these things, how each of these still applies, but a big paradigm shift is happening in terms of the product thinking when it comes to voice first thinking. And then there are a couple of examples I'll take, and then we have a good amount of time for Q&A. What's a problem statement here, right? Like, it's quite common for everybody to start thinking of a solution first, right? Without understanding what the customers, what the user wants, it's quite natural for us to start thinking a solution and say, oh, I have a solution. Can we go find a market for that? Problem statement is, it stems from the fact that a person has a problem or a requirement to be met. So there's an unmet need. And as a product manager, it's so critical for that person to understand that before starting to develop solutions. Maybe existing solution can be repackaged, but this problem statement is very, very critical. Right. So at work, all the time we say, you know what, we get a requirement from one of the business leaders or stakeholders or even customers. Say, can we reiterate the problem statement? Can we write down what a problem statement is? Why is it a problem? And there are a lot of theories, there are a lot of tools, there are a lot of great strategic books about how to do it. But predominantly simple common sense is to say what the problem statement is, and are we trying to address that first? If that's not being addressed, you do everything, you might miss the boat and completely build a different product or wrong product, or the customer may not say, I needed this, I need a totally different one, right? Understanding the problem statement is very, very critical for a product manager. And then the next good thing about is the working backwards. I'll come back to each of those things in a deep direction, right? So when you work backwards on the customer, it is literally, it's irrelevant for the customer to know how you have implemented it, what technology you have done. Like somebody says, I have an AI-driven solution in a mobile app. Customer does not need to know that. He may be interested. He might be excited to hear about it. But at the end of the day, his problem is what he is trying to come to you, or as a product, he wants to use it, see if it's going to solve the problem. So how do we get a discipline of doing this, right? The very common concept of working backwards in a lot of companies, like especially Amazon follows the PRFAQ format where you work backwards. Think that customer does not know anything about your product, has not even heard how it's implemented, how long it took to do, how many engineers put an effort to that. So this is my problem. I start using your product, let's say when it's released, right? Start from that point of view and start building your thoughts and say, if I had to get to that, even with 6 months product cycle, if it's 1 year product cycle, if it's a 1 week product cycle, does not matter. Work towards what the customer would get. And there's the next part, which I'll talk about in a product manager, is a willingness to buy. If it's the willingness to buy in terms of money, the time he spends, everything is still part of the customer's willingness, right? Without keeping that in mind, if a customer has stated a problem, how do we work backwards and build all the technologies what we need, completely innovate a new technology, whatever is it, right? Let's look at this currently, what it is. The learning. If a customer or a learner in this case wants to learn, how do you make sure you can provide the learning? How do you disseminate different ways? The customer never said, I needed to be in a class, I needed to be in different city. No, he said, or she said, I want to learn, I want to go from point A to point B, or I know this is a problem, or I need this learning. How do I get from there to the next point? So working backwards applies everywhere. And how did we achieve this in looking at this webinar, right? We've been thinking about what can we do as a workshop, what can we do as a courses, but the learning was the core thing. So we said, let's do a webinar. So the learning continues. So the customer says, good, at least in this situation of all the constraint, my requirement got met. Next, other important concept is the voice of the customer, right? As a product manager, look at the typical stakeholders a product manager would talk to. In engineering or a typical IT software, it is a software engineers, could be data scientists, could be data engineers, operations guys, anybody. If it's an FMCG product, could be completely manufacturing, could be some chemical engineers, could be mechanical engineer, anybody, right? But the product manager has this critical role of being the voice of the customer. So when a customer says, I want this, I'll talk about next time, how do you get that? I would like to use a particular product to solve a problem, or if I want a GPS solution to move from point A to point B, then you sit to the customer and say, what is it you need? And articulate in a way so the requirements are given to the engineers, right? There are a number of steps we can talk about it, because once you have a customer buy-in, you may have to build a business case, get an executive buy-in, get the funding internally. If it's a startup, you have to get from investors. If you have to bootstrap, you have to prioritize your funding. All of those things still falls onto a product manager's role. There are a few other things which I talk about in different roles a product guys will have. This is one thing which I want to quickly cover and then come back to it a little later. Then the dialogue, right? Day in the life of, if you're talking to in healthcare industry, a software product is there, like AI-based software product is there to help a doctor address a particular problem, maybe augment his pain points to some of the quick solutions. So how do you address that? By doing a day in the life of kind of thing, where a doctor is doing his activities, but this software or a hardware or IoT device, whatever that could be, could not come in way of his treating his patients. How do you do this is when a product manager, a true ideal product manager, or if he's building a new product, would sit and observe how this healthcare professional, could be doctor, nurse, surgeon. A surgeon may not be applicable in many times, but let's say a doctor, a physician, how does that person handle their day-to-day activities? Very interesting. I learned in about 10 years ago, something called ethnography. Ethnography comes from anthropology, where they observe people, how they behave, what they do. And when you build products, when you build technologies, it should be enabler and not a hurdle in between. When there's a hurdle, there's a learning curve, then there's always adoption challenges, right? So these are two things, which is a day in the life of an ethnographer. I'll come back to it a little later. Now let's talk about what I talked about, the problem statement, right? You guys have heard about all this lean startup and those theories. Let's talk about just like build, measure, and learn. Or I also use this new way called as hypothesize, design, test, and learn. During the design part and the test part, you are in the solution space, right? But even before jumping into solution space, what we should be in the problem statement. if a problem is that I believe learners in this city has this challenge to go to a place and learn, or travel is a challenge, whatever it is, then let's put a hypothesis saying this is a problem statement. I'll go ahead, problem, solve this. We don't even know which technology you're going to use, what solution you're going to use, you're going to app. None of those things are relevant at this stage. So first understand what the problem is, what the need, or is it a must have, is it nice to have, is it a want? All of those things gives you a hypothesis saying, okay, there is a requirement, right? And then are you ready to solve it? That's the next questions you should ask. Are we in the right position to solve it? Is the timing is right? So something called as a product market opportunity kind of thing, right? Market opportunity tells you that, okay, this is the right time to solve it. Many times the market may not be ready for a solution, may not be ready to, like adopt certain things because it's got constrained. Like say if it's internet was a problem, you could not assume a lot of things be available and there's no internet connectivity, right? So there are some constraints also you should think through and put all those in hypothesis. Once those hypotheses is nailed down and say, okay, now this is my hypothesis. Hypothesis is still a hypothesis. You need to test it. There are a number of ways to test it. In the past, what people used to do is like user survey. This is what my thought is. Do you think it's still relevant? You can do all those things before even you build it. In the new methodologies, what we say is instead of being the only theoretical and only asking a lot of open-ended questions and maybe like surveys, you can also build like MVP kind of thing, like where you can test it with the customers directly. That's what the whole concept came in, where you can design it and test it. But we don't know yet if it's the right solution. Should we go down and put like a lot of engineers on that? At this stage, may not be relevant yet, right? So this methodology of like build, measure, learn, or what you call this design, test, and learn, helps you to build incremental part, but it should be fully usable. That's what we call MVP, which is fully usable, and then test it with the target segment. You should understand who the target segment is and test it with them. That's when you're in the solution space. A specific implementation might apply to one target segment in one geographic region, one demography. You test it and then say, you know what, okay, this is very similar things is also applicable for other groups as well. That's how you start testing for different groups. And all the learnings is what tells you, okay, yes, I think this is a viable solution. I need to go build a full-blown solution part of it, right? Now let's come back to the next part where if you as a product manager found out, yes, there is a great opportunity and I want to go build it. Often we hear different titles as a product guys, right? I think now I started calling myself as a product leader because you could be any of these things at different times of time. And also you could be doing different, if you're in a leadership role, if you're like a co-founder of company, you'll be doing multiple things beyond a product as well. It's a very common cliche to say product manager is CEO of a product, but a product manager has some more things to it. I'll come to it in a minute. Now let's talk about the product owner, right? From the agile methodology, we keep hearing this product owner. Product owners also derives from the engineering concept as well, right? Like used to be like not even worry about the customer at all, and the user stories and all this sprints were not done prior to it. They used to have a long requirements and roadmap, and product managers used to just drive that, and engineers would not get so much connected to the end customer. So they started bringing this user stories and brought the product owner's concept. So the engineer person also starts becoming part of the product ownership. That's the concept of product owner. But the product manager has a different connotation to it, right? Ideally, if there is a revenue, or if it's a customer facing, if it's a business facing, if it's like a P&L kind of role, a product manager plays much bigger than the product owner. That's a small nuance people should understand when they say what a product manager role is different than the product owner. And if some products need messaging, needs to communicate, maybe create artifacts, for those things, you would need a product marketer, right? But if you quickly look at it, a PM role, people refer them as one and the same. It's not so, right? I want to understand some of the subtle differences here between product manager and a product marketer. Even more, for me, it's amuses, but I think it's also confusing for a lot of people who have not heard, because I'm a PM, right? It's a program manager also calls himself a PM, herself as a PM. What is the difference between a program manager and a product manager, right? A program manager runs a set of programs, works with stakeholders, does a lot of communication, and make sure it's on time and track and all this stuff. If there is no project manager, a program manager also runs the actual daily meetings, scrum activities, all those things. In the past, there used to be a lot of these project manager roles, which has now become a part of a product owner's role and the scrum master's role, right? All these are all still relevant in the engineering space. A product manager also might be doing some of these things, but has additional responsibility if like time to market, or build versus a partner, or if you have to buy a particular different solution from elsewhere, or what's the incremental revenue this product going to give me, what's the pricing of the product, what's the positioning of the product. If I had to get X engineers, what's the ROI on that? If I had to get an executive buy-in and put a this product gets me incremental revenue. On my previous role, I used to have a 10% of a P&L for the company, and our CEO came to say like, Shesh, if you introduce these two products, will my next quarterly revenue go up by X percentage? Then I had to work backward and say, if I had to get additional revenue from this product, what should be the product life cycle? How soon should I launch it? What should be the cost of the product? What should be the price of the product? And how much of engineers, because ROI also gets ROI, bottom line, everything gets impacted. And I was given a challenge to come back with a new product to introduce to the market and keep a competitive analysis as well. A competition is announcing in the next 3 months. With all these constraints, you have to introduce a product. Maybe version 1 of the product should be launched and made announcement, and version 2 can be done later, right? All this still fall into the role of a product manager. Now, these days, I hear a lot of people talk about new roles where they call themselves as a product manager and also interchangeably as another title. I'm sure if it had been a workshop, I would have taken the question from these people. But I'm assuming you guys know what I'm talking about. The interesting and the most, the new age title or product guys are having it is called the data scientist, right? In the data scientist world, let me just give this trivia. Take 2 seconds reading about this. All right. So back in 2008, when DJ Patil was working with LinkedIn, he is a mathematician and statistician, right? Like, so he thought about what's the right title for this, and he coined the word data scientist. So the reason I bring up here is there are a lot of data scientists who also say they're product managers, which is fine, nothing wrong. Because if your product is completely on data science and analytics and big data and AI, the bulk of the product, what you develop, what the outcome comes of, it's an analytics product. Then why not call yourself as a product manager as well, right? Then there's some more concepts which, in the interest of time, I'll not go much deeper into it. But there are some nuances between design thinking and industrial design. And there's several some of those things which gives you a segue to what I want to talk about: the user experience and user interface. And then let's talk about the voice user experience and the voice user interface. So we have been hearing now the design schools, the design concepts, right? The product manager has to be very, very cognizant of the design thinkers as well. Now these days, a product as a team has a product manager, a UX designer as a design team. If it's an AI-driven product, it'll have a data science team. And if it's obviously the engineers. Engineering has not only the data engineers, the DevOps, the core software engineers, and the core quality like QA testing people as well, right? So all these are part of the core team, or what we call the pod there. So design thinking also is very critical component. But if it's a very large scale product, you'll have a dedicated people who are design thinkers, right? If not, if in the lack of that role, a product manager also dons head of a design thinker or a design person. Same with UX person. But UI is not the product manager. UI is a more of an engineering task, which is usually in the engineering domain. And the user experience or the design part is the problems domain, which is what the product manager would have it. Industrial design, if you're designing like say IoT based products, or if it's anything with hardware, you will also have an industrial design, because it needs completely different toolkit to be given for the manufacturers and things like that. So if a product manager in that industry is looking at it, definitely he also dons the hat of industrial design and gives the industrial design like a template for the manufacturing company, right? So let's talk about the user experience and the user interface, right? So the UX part is so critical because when if you design something for a mobile app versus a desktop, it's so different. And in the last 5 to 10 years, we started hearing designers, and they come from like completely like what we call the arts background, like the fashion designers, and like they have the complete view of the different thing than the engineering, the left brain, right brain kind of thing, right? So those UX people completely saying, is it a usability considered here? However complex this implementation part of it, if it's so tough to use a product, if it's so confusing, the flow of steps, the whole hierarchy of things, what you do in from the start journey to using the product, those are all the things which a user experience person will do. So UX person has to work very closely with the product manager because he's putting the entire roadmap, the product planning, and all the stuff. So UX person closely works with the product manager as well. Now comes the new concept, which is called the VUX, or the voice user experience person and the voice user interface person. The second half of the topic, which I want to cover, is on the voice first thinking. It's a large topic by itself. I had done a half-day workshop there. But I thought in the listeners here, a lot of people are techies, have heard a lot of these new technologies. It'll be good segue for us to talk a little bit about that. But it's completely a half-a-day workshop kind of thing, which we'll come back sometime later, actually. Yeah. Right? The reason I bring again voice first thinking is if you people are just getting exposed to what, or even just understanding what a product management concept and a UX person is, believe me, in the last 2 to 3 years, it's completely transforming now. What you designed, what you build, the apps, the desktops, the entire software, if it's like pre-cloud era, which is like on-prem enterprise version to now a SaaS-based version, all of those things are still forms one ground layer. And now voice first thinking is complete shift in the way you do things, because it's like natural, right? Like say, if I had to be talking to all of you, the way I would have interacted, if it's through like a text or a chat, is different than what I'm now delivering through a webinar. Like say, what I'm delivering through voice is so different than it would have been delivered to an app. But now there's an amalgamation of different technologies. So what I just bring up here is back in 2010, 11, when Apple acquired Siri, it was a very what I call, like everybody's like marveled with what it can do, but it evolved, right? It used to understand only like American accent before. Now it started understanding even different dialects and different languages now. That's evolution which started Siri back in 2010. So almost a decade now. Then we had Google Now, which I think happened in about 2012, where you could take some voice commands, NLP based text analysis and voice analysis, and it transformed into a great product. Then 2014, we had Alexa. Then 2018 onwards, we started having what we call this now Google Assistant. And now 2019 onwards, we have Alexa, Google, all of this have even the language like can understand like Hindi now, or even different regional languages as well, right? So that's transformation. So imagine now if you as come as a product manager to go develop something in the voice first product, it's a complete different thinking actually. It cannot have the way same you have a real estate of a mobile app, or like 5 years back everybody said don't just port your desktop product onto mobile because the user experience is very poor, the real estate is very critical, what you show, maybe the network issues, there's so many things. So they started talking about a mobile first thinking. Now the whole app and the whole smartphone thing, what they're saying is next couple of years it might be gone, and people are now getting used to the voice first thinking, where you have to develop completely new way of handling the requests, the voice commands. For example, right now I'm delivering entire thing, but I'm not getting any feedback. Imagine, I don't know, because apologies here again, I'm not able to see the chat bot here, the chat screen, because I'm sharing the whole screen. For whatever reason, it's not showing that. Imagine I'm not able to get any feedback at all. I have no idea if people are listening, answering questions, or chatting, doing something else. Now, if I had to develop a product like a webinar like this, it's so critical for me to think through all of those things, pause, ask questions, and tailor my content, right? That's a simple example of how one should even deliver a product if it's voice-based thinking, right? I just want to wrap it up here and go for Q&A so it's more interactive. Voice first thinking, I had a lot more to cover, but given it's more a workshop module where I can have interaction and do some exercises, it's not possible in a webinar kind of format. So I cut short some of those things. But I just want to have the second trivia for you guys as a takeaway, where everybody talks about tech debt, right? It's a common agile term where you have a lot of technical legacy stuff which you need to clear up, because otherwise your roadmap is not moving forward. Your product owners keep saying, I'm not able to make things progress because a lot of tech debt, because there's like some old Java package not upgraded, whatever it is, right? For a product managers, there's a new thing which I recently learned about called strategy debt, where if you're not thinking far ahead and living in yesteryears and building product for that, one maybe a competition already built, B, the customer requirements already changed, or C, the technology has evolved that you're still using old technology, and the product what you use maybe not like commercially viable. The unit economics may not address it properly. So it's not just a tech debt. For a product manager, there's also something called a strategy debt, which is where they should constantly innovate themselves and understand what is the next things happening, right? That's where I just conclude this session by giving this last slide and then go to Q&A, where we can have more question and answer sessions, where uh, he recently died, like about month and a half back. It's so sad to lose him. Clayton Christensen, or Clay Christensen, wrote this book called Innovators Dilemma, where greatest technologies might be surviving for like maybe decade in these like COVID-19 times. Something totally not thought of will completely disrupt, and the biggest companies may not even exist because they did not think through it. So I'll leave this last note because it's very important for product managers to have this all the time in their back of the head, that how am I disrupting, how am I innovating, how am I creating sustained competitive advantage for my products. That becomes very critical as well, right? So if I just had to say from the whole session, if you want to have three takeaways, make sure when you build products which meets the customer requirement, right? And then there's something called as a user and a buyer, which you could not go in depth in this because I had an exercise which would have made everybody think what a user is and a buyer is. Let me quickly iterate what it is. A user of the product is one who uses a product irrespective of who purchased it. Like, for example, a toy, right? Parents usually are the ones who purchase it, and kids use the product, which is the toy. But as a product manager, when you build a product, you should be aware of it, that there are certain analysis what a parent would do if a toy is bought. Like, say, for example, now the screen time is so critical. Kids would not have bought our apps in the past. Maybe now they said, you know what, okay to download an app or give them access to some of the devices. In the past, maybe they would have said no, right? Whereas kids still are the users of product. They might love to be the animated products or some of the gamification of the product, would have liked it. But to go keep both a user and a buyer, and this is for a B2C. If it's a B2B2C, which is like if you're talking to another enterprise, a buyer could be a financial department or a procurement department, whereas a user could be an IT department or a marketing department, right? So these are the very clear distinction what you should know: who is the user of the product, and that's a typical you do the user persona, and then you do the buyer as a buyer persona. I know in the short time we had, we could not go much deep into this exercise about understanding user persona and buyer persona. I'm sure there are a couple of courses or a couple of things which you understand from the product management perspective. When you go deep into that, you'll understand this is very critical when you start doing the user requirement, get the user persona, get the design done, then start to develop the product. The last part, what I say is, I'm also an engineer by myself. When I started my career, it's quite but natural for somebody to start thinking solution and build a product around that, and then start saying who will buy my product. It may not work all the time. I know we keep hearing from like Apple's famous saying that customer would not know that they need a product, so you need to build it. But it's very exceptional case like that. But I can go in much more detail about how they also developed, but not just overnight. They learned all the pain points of various existing products, and before they brought in the iPod or the iPhone. There they typically say customer would not know it, so you cannot talk about problem first. We have to develop it, but as an exception. But rest of the world, I would say always avoid solution chasing the problems. I'll just leave this at the screen and excuse me. And I think go ahead and take questions and audio. And this is just my slide. I thought if you're interested, I do a lot of coaching and I do startup mentoring as well. More than happy to reach out and I'm working with GUVi also to do some more workshops and maybe such webinars in the future. At this time, I'll just take questions now and stop sharing. And go for chat. Go ahead, guys. And also, I think probably if you want to unmute, Harun, if you want to do that, you can unmute it and take some questions as well now. For the next 20 minutes, I think we can have more Q&A and I'll also be constantly looking for the chat there. Go ahead, guys. Any questions? Okay, so I think I see here. I thought it's critical to segregate what parts go into the voice and what remains as a web-based app. Lot of thought. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Just imagine, I have a lot of articles I can share with the group after this thing, and I'll ask with organizers to share those things. Even the very concept of designing a product and doing a prototype needs a complete different way of doing it because it's not easy to just go and test it, right? Like if you had an app, you can have them do a click stream and understand which options they're clicking or whatever. In voice, you got to get a feedback for that. And like I'm doing now, right? If you have to do a communication, you cannot leave it open-ended. You should expect some response from the listener. All those things are critical when you design a voice product as well. The next question, hold on. Can you please provide more clarity on how to evaluate a problem statement, right? So problem statement is typically when you see like, for example, let's say you are developing an app for like, say simple, like say now, Swiggy has developed an app to order a product and deliver it, right? The problem statement could be very simple as that a hungry subscriber would want ABC options and have it ordered in like, simple steps, payment taken care of and deliver the food. The problem statement would just be very vague as like, I want food to be delivered at my doorstep with minimal friction, like almost no friction or minimal friction, and should be tasty to meet my needs. The problem statement would be just, but you can say I can have my own app, I can partner with somebody else. Like see, the way now people are doing is like Uber developed Uber Eats, right? So there could be different ways you deliver the food, different ways you can take the order. Like say problem statement said I should be able to order food. It never said it should have an app. You can take it over phone. A lot of people start off with the WhatsApp, right? WhatsApp says, you just give me order, I'll take the order and deliver it to you. That's one way of delivering. Nobody says I need an app. The problem statement is still remains same, that I need to deliver food within a short period of time. That's how the problem statement starts. And then you might see some competition do something and understand that there's a pain points there. You address those pain points and say, okay, that's how somebody else is doing a mistake. It's causing more pain and friction than easing the problem of ordering food. You include that in your problem statement. So all of those things you bake into and say, okay, this is the problem statement, right? And then you find out, do I want to go solve a bigger problem or a part of the problem? You might say, I want to like Google said, I want to address the world's hunger for knowledge or whatever, search anything on the world. That's a very ambitious, very audacious, big statement, right? We can always take a smaller part of it and say, you know what, I'll work with ecosystem partners and use all the existing technologies and build a part of the problem. That's also a problem statement for you because that's what you got as an addressable market, right? There's a total, what we call a TAM, that could be very huge, but what's serviceable because of your knowledge, because of your appetite to build a product could be small. You can take a slice of that and solve that problem statement as well. So problem statement also could be like a big one and take a chunk of it and say solve that as well. Okay. Hope I addressed it. Otherwise, raise a question again. Can you talk more about the process of generating product ideas? Product ideas is not like, I don't know, how do we address this? Again, goes back to problem, right? Like ethnographer. Now people are realizing there are so many problems which was ignored or it was taken for granted. As a true product manager looks at how they are addressing and how they are solving it by themselves, and if a technology intervention or if a product introduction will solve the problem without causing extra learning curve. I take this example, right? Like video conference itself. You see, Skype was existing before, Zoom also got introduced now, but they found out there are a lot of pain points which was not addressed in Skype. One thing which I write recently is the virtual background Zoom offers, where you feel you are in the middle of a crowd and you don't want them to be distracted, right? So then you use a virtual background, which is a new technology which is available. But Zoom said, I'll do that. Or Zoom made it free for a lot of people to start off, or multiple people to get on there and record. Some of these problem statements were always there. Maybe Skype did not solve that, or WebEx did not solve it, or it's very expensive. That gives you an idea to say, okay, no, let me develop this part and solve it. Now Zoom is the most used app, right? So product ideas are there everywhere. You should see which one do you want to solve and which one there's a customer base which are ready to adopt it. And you know that the product life cycle, right? Like there's innovators, the early adopters, the early majority, and then it comes to laggards. So when you have the early adopters, you can test this completely new idea and see if it makes sense, then make the product work for them, right? You know what? I think I might also want to turn the video on if it's going to help. I feel if it's going to be more connective, let me know if it's going to help you guys. Yeah. All right. What kind of business are focusing on the voice interface? Very good. Yeah. And also forecast. Okay. I'll come to the product lifecycle, Nirmala. I'll just cover this concept of the which industries are using voice user interface. Like say, for example, map, right? A few years back, Google Maps, everybody thought you will hold in your hand or you have a dashboard on your car where you can go and completely look from point A to point B, but it's not safe at all, right? That's when they started making that. If I can take a voice command and say, I want to go to, like, say, I'm in Bangalore and I'm driving and I just want to say, I want to go to, like, say, MG Road, right? How easy it would have been if I just said, give me the direction to MG Road, where there are multiple things you should notice here. One is, I did not say my current location, so it's assumed, or you should again ask the user, do you want it from current location? As simple as the Google Maps, if you start applying voice user interface, which is VUI, and voice user experience, if experience has too many questions annoyingly, then you turn it off. I have done many times. It gives you like turn by turn alerts. I said turned off because I know this route very well. Whereas in some other places, I have no clue where it is, so I need a turn by turn alert as well. That's the user interface part. And in the voice experience wise, if I ask a question, it should be able to understand from what context I'm talking about, but it might miss you, like, if you're in a car, it might take a path, certain roads to go. If it doesn't ask you, you might assume that you are walking and ask the same question to Google Maps. Hey, how do I go to this place? It's only 100 meters from there. If it shows you're already there, it's not true. Or it says go park your car here, it doesn't true. Or if you have, I think Apple Maps also introduced this. If you're in a parking lot of a mall and you say, where do I go? Now it quickly understand that you're parking lot of that mall and this is a third floor. So it automatically to escalator in the second floor, take a right turn there. That's a big difference in way you develop a product, because it's not the same way what you did before, where you had tons of text and I click something, because they're constantly walking and giving commands. So this voice commands are well adapted in the travel industry, or what I call the Google Maps. Voice commerce, right? Alexa recently introduced, or not recently, I was part of the Alexa beta testing in India when I was part of Amazon, where we did a lot of this regional language-based testing as well. So I'm a Kannadiga, so I used to do like I was part of the beta group which can contribute in different ways, and my one of the expertise was Kannada. So I used to give a lot of commands in Kannada. Time S2. S2 is actually what time it is, but it could quickly understand you're actually asking for time, and it understood that it has to answer back in Kannada, or it should get a command first, right? So voice is a big difference in the way it is developed per language. And then voice commerce. If you just say order kg of rice, um, it quickly understood that is it last time the same brand or a new brand? Should I order and pay it by your Amazon Pay, or should I pay through cash, or do you want cash on delivery? All these options are part of your design. If you're developing an application, which Alex has taken care of, it pauses, asks a lot of questions, and at the last it says, I'm ordering this brand of rice, and should be delivered by next 2 days, right? That's with the voice command. It's a voice commerce. The next thing I think you guys talk about the driverless car, right? If you just go sit in one of the Tesla and say, take me to this place, um, it knows the command is to drive safely, look into all the traffic congestions, and go to your existing location. Where again, bring some technology here is the AI part. If I know that I am the authorized person to give this voice command, what we now have something called the sound or acoustic fingerprints. We know through biometrics that I am the person. So the voice command recognizes that it's like say Shesh is one who has spoken to me before. He is authorized and authenticate clearly. Okay, yes, his command is to go, like say, take me to. So there are two different yesterday. It's a simple command. If another human hears that, imagine if you're developing a product, it has to understand that you were there at the same Bangalore Central in JP Nagar yesterday, and not ask you questions that is it the same place, or many times because I know it's the same person asking the same commands, I say yes, I take you to the place. Those are the kind of nuances one should start thinking when they design the voice commands. That applies to all that, like it could be voice commerce, could be banking, could be automotive, whatever it is, right? Automotive. Look at the banking part, right? If I say pay $1,000 to Mr. X, right? Authentication is very critical, and sure, all the authorities, I am the person who can give this money transfer, and okay, yes, it's transferred. But the same thing, I was in Singapore last year, and one of the banks, I cannot take the name, but they're also experimenting. And in a bus stop right opposite to the bank, they said you can use Google Home or Google Voice Assistant and try it out. Imagine it said, "What's my balance?" and it reads out loud that your balance is $5,000, right? You cannot say that because certain things, if it was text, your eyes only, you cannot speak aloud. Um, it might recognize that a person is already wearing a Bluetooth and it's on a headset. It should quickly understand, okay, yes, now it's okay to speak out the balance. Or some other things that is like privacy part, right? Because it's so assumed that you're using a phone or a screen, nobody else is viewing that. Whereas in audio, you just blurt out so many things. It could be so damaging as opposed to being convenience part. Those are things which you look at from a commerce perspective as well. I hope I answered that question. Let me just take another question, which is okay, product life cycle. Product life cycle, like so typically, right? Like when you introduce a product in the market, if it's a completely new product, you have something called as the early adopters who have not seen the product before, or it could be completely innovative product. I was like, as I said, beta tester for Alexa, right? In India, I was an early adopter for this because it had a lot of problems, and the early adopters have forgiveness to be part of it. It's okay. It's not working properly. I had to repeat some commands. It was messing up. Initially, those days when I could, now it's so common for Alexa to just say, sing the song. It knows, or if I say, press and say, get this one, it says, I have Alexa at home and Echo at home, right? It says, play this movie. It says, do you want from Netflix or from Prime Video? Because I have both the subscription. It automatically recognizes that I have both the subscriptions and says the same movie is being played in both the places. But in recent, one of the things I was looking at, play this, it said it's not available in any of those things. Do you want to go to YouTube? So there's so much of underlying work it has to do before it says, I'll do this. So early adopters don't mind such hiccups at all, right? Then this early, then you have the, I think you should read this book called Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore. Sorry about that. Jeffrey Moore has written the Crossing the Chasm, where it's mostly applicable for startups, but in general in any product. A lot of great products don't succeed because they don't cross the chasm. So early adopters love the product, give a great feedback, everything is fine. But when it goes to early majority or the mainstream, they're very particular. They need references, how it's worked well. Is it really great product? Is it meeting my requirement? Is it my price tag? All of those things become relevant for a early majority and mainstream. Then the late majority, like say for example, now if uh, some new technology is there available and it's been there for so long, app is there. Let's say even for example, app which was there all the time for banking, but now it's pushing the majority of the people to start using UPI now. Whereas early adopters, I was one of those guys who just started off right away from my bank app, then went on to phone pay, then tried Google Pay. I did all of those things because it was early adopters. Like any UPI issues, I would say it's okay. Whereas late majority guys are like, oh, I don't want to try all those things. Or you know what, if every whole world feels comfortable, I'm so paranoid that something get hacked, my compromise or whatever. And those are the ones who will use it in the late majority. So this product life cycle dictates how you should do it in each cycle. Some product will work very well in early adopters. From the learning, you may have to change the packaging. Some product has to do some more, maybe bells and whistles, some pricing. You can do different packaging for your product when you reach out to the mainstream as well. That's what the product life cycle is. I would encourage you guys to read the book called Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore. All right. Next question says, the next question, what methods can you take to figure out my product idea will have market viability? Um, I mean, it's a tough question to answer in one simple way. Are there stats of newly launched products in the last 5-10 years? See, for example, right, there's so many products, I'll tell you. I take 2 or 3 strong examples, great companies, like say Apple, um, has been trying so hard to get Apple TV. I was in the US for a long time. Apple TV always want to get into the home screen and say, I've done everything. I got iPod content, everything, but they could not succeed with Apple TV. Whereas now Prime Video is so well accepted, Netflix is so well accepted, they're still trying it out. Content may not be the only solution which they had cracked on the iPod or the music part. Apple TV is still not got into the mainstream yet. Example, they took it and said, okay, we also create another MP3 player. It was never successful. Apple, Amazon, we did a Fire phone. They thought you will be a subscriber, you will order products, but only Amazon products. You can use it to stores and quickly check the price on Amazon. And Fire phone was touted to be a big success initially, but then it fell so badly that it was canned. Completely, Fire phone was canned. But the good part about this, look at this, right? Fire phones, all the learning was put into Alexa, and now Fire TV is a big success. So many a times there's not like straightforward answer. Okay, just do this and you'll get it. You may have to succeed, try it out, repackage it. Maybe sometimes some products work so well in one market, it'll be never accepted in another market, right? So the market opportunity, the dynamics, and also opportunities like this, right? Like say EdTech. EdTech has been there for some time now, and Coursera has been offering product. GUVi is now doing it. Upgrade has been doing it. Everybody is now rethinking and saying, can we do something different now? So it's a great time for some product managers. I'm sure GUVi also, we are looking at it. What do we what I said, repurpose some component, course change something. So the new market is demanding something different, including the Baiju, right? I know the head of products there. He was saying they'll never try to go head on with the teachers, right? There's always going to be augmenting to the school learning. But in times of like this, where the school learning is completely stopped, you may have to do some quick changes so that the app is being very well used. It's tested, like load tested for like huge usage. But if you do that, you're successful. So it's the opportunity is now available where people can change what they do and how they can repackage it, or maybe some add some small features there. And every company is doing it now, including like Phone Pay or Google Pay. I haven't heard much of Google Pay, but Phone Pay, Paytm, they're making some course corrections, changing the way they package it. Swiggy is completely saying people are not ordering so much of food. They're saying we'll deliver grocery, right? So if the problem statement said I'll get food to your doorstep, but they found out I have all the competencies, but if I had to be successful and be empathizing with my existing subscribers, if I deliver grocery, they'll be more than happy to and like relate to the Swiggy as a brand, right? That's what is very critical when you're as a product manager. How do you quickly change on your feet, and what should you change there as well? Okay, I think I addressed that question. Yeah. Data security, right? So that's one of the reasons why the banking has been slow in adopting some of those SaaS-based technologies or voice-based technologies, because data security is a critical aspect. But it's not so bad, because even financial industry is now moving to cloud now. There's enough disaster recovery there. There's enough backup. There was encryption in transit. Something called data encryption at rest and data encryption in transit, right? At rest is where you have data storage, local or local network. So if you remember recently, WhatsApp introduced that messages are encrypted. So imagine now you can take orders of the requirement of data. Like tread this path, not going too far, because error side of caution is still good. But as this you design, then test it and learn. In this cycle,